Good evening. Welcome to Stories for Sleep. Take a deep breath and let your worries float away. Allow your mind and body to unwind as you sink deeper into relaxation. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more calm and centered. You are safe and at peace. Allow yourself to fully embrace this moment and let go of any tension. As you begin to relax, we'll start tonight's sleep story. Once upon a time, there was a forest unlike any other. The Sleepy Forest, as it was known, was filled with trees that had the power to make anyone who walked through them feel incredibly tired. Some said it was the magic of the forest, while others claimed that the trees themselves were enchanted. Whatever the reason, the Sleepy Forest was a place of great peace and rest, and many travelers sought it out when they needed a good night's sleep. The Sleepy Forest was a vast expanse of green, dotted with trees of all shapes and sizes. Each tree was unique, with its own distinctive bark, leaves, and branches. Some were tall and skinny, while others were short and squat. Some had leaves that were vibrant shades of green and gold, while others were a deep, rich brown. Despite their differences, all the trees in the Sleepy Forest had one thing in common. They could put even the most restless traveler into a deep, peaceful sleep. It was said that the tree's leaves contained a special type of pollen that, when inhaled, would send the traveler into a state of complete relaxation. Some even claimed that the pollen had magical properties, allowing the traveler to experience vivid dreams and otherworldly visions. For as long as anyone could remember, the Sleepy Forest had been a place of great mystery and enchantment. The locals spoke of strange, otherworldly creatures that roamed the forest at night, and whispered tales of lost travelers who had never returned from their journeys into the trees. Despite these rumors, however, the forest remained a popular destination for those in need of a good night's sleep. One such traveler was a young woman named Sarah. Sarah had been on the road for weeks, traveling from town to town in search of adventure and excitement. She had always been a restless soul, unable to settle down in one place for too long. But as the days wore on and her journey wore her down, Sarah found herself growing more and more tired. One evening, as she was making her way through a dense forest, Sarah spotted a glimmer of light in the distance. Curious, she followed the light and soon found herself standing at the edge of the Sleepy Forest. She had heard of the forest before, of course, but had never actually seen it for herself. Sarah hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should venture into the Sleepy Forest. But the longer she stood there, the more she felt her eyelids growing heavy. It was like the forest was calling to her, beckoning her into its embrace. With a sigh, Sarah stepped into the forest. As she walked through the trees, she felt her body relax and her mind clear. All around her, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling in a soothing, hypnotic rhythm. She felt like she was walking through a dream, like nothing in the world could disturb her peace. As Sarah walked deeper into the forest, she began to notice strange things. The trees seemed to be changing, their bark growing smoother and their leaves turning a soft, glowing green. She heard the distant sound of music, the soft strains of a lullaby floating on the breeze. And every time she breathed in, she could feel a strange, calming energy coursing through her body. It wasn't long before Sarah found herself drifting off to sleep. She didn't even remember laying down. It was like her body had simply given in to the forest's gentle embrace. As she closed her eyes, she felt a warm, comforting presence surrounding her, like she was wrapped in a cocoon of safety and security. And then she fell into a deep sleep. Sarah dreamed that she was walking through the Sleepy Forest once again. But this time, everything was different. The forest was even more enchanting than before, and Sarah found herself unable to resist its pull. She walked deeper and deeper into the trees, marveling at the sights and sounds around her. As she wandered through the Sleepy Forest, Sarah began to encounter strange creatures. There were tiny faeries flitting about, their wings shimmering in the dappled sunlight. There were talking animals too, rabbits and squirrels and foxes, all of them friendly and curious. And in the distance, she could see a castle, looming up out of the mist like something out of a fairy tale. Sarah approached the castle with caution, unsure what to expect. But as she drew closer, she saw that the castle was not at all what she had imagined. It was not a place of darkness and danger, but rather one of light and beauty. The walls were made of shimmering crystal, and the windows were filled with glowing jewels of every color. As she approached the castle gates, they swung open of their own accord. Sarah stepped inside, her heart pounding with excitement. The inside of the castle was just as breathtaking as the outside, with gleaming marble floors and walls lined with precious tapestries. And then, she saw him. There was a man standing in the center of the castle's great hall, his back turned to her. He was dressed in a flowing white robe, and his long hair shone like gold in the sunlight. Sarah felt a thrill run through her at the sight of him, and she stepped closer, hoping to catch a glimpse of his face. As she drew nearer, the man turned around. Sarah gasped. He was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. His eyes were a deep, piercing blue, and his face was chiseled and perfect. He smiled at her, and Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "Welcome," he said, his voice like honey. "I have been expecting you." Sarah couldn't believe it. "Me? But why?" The man's smile grew wider. "Because you are special, Sarah. You have been chosen." "Chosen? For what?" The man reached out a hand, and Sarah felt a strange compulsion to take it. She did, and he led her across the hall to a pair of doors. He pushed them open, revealing a room filled with light and warmth. Inside the room was a bed, covered in the softest blankets Sarah had ever seen. She felt herself drawn to the bed, and she lay down, snuggling into the covers. The man sat down next to her, taking her hand in his. "You are here to rest, Sarah," he said. "To find peace and happiness. This is your sanctuary." Sarah felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude wash over her. She had never felt so safe, so at peace. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the blankets and the softness of the bed surrounding her. And then she woke up. Sarah opened her eyes to find herself back in the sleepy forest. She sat up, feeling refreshed and energized, like she had just woken up from the best night's sleep of her life. As she stood up and began to make her way back to the edge of the forest, Sarah felt a sense of sadness wash over her. She didn't want to leave the sleepy forest, not when it had brought her so much peace and comfort. But as she stepped out of the forest and back into the world, she felt a sense of warmth and happiness that stayed with her for the rest of her days. The sleepy forest had given her something that she would never forget, a dream of peace and happiness that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Sarah went on with her life, but she could never shake the feeling that the sleepy forest was calling to her. Every night, she would close her eyes and imagine herself back in the forest, surrounded by the beauty and magic that she had experienced there. As the years went by, Sarah grew older, but the memory of the sleepy forest never faded. She told her children and grandchildren about the magical place that had brought her so much joy, and they listened with wide eyes and open hearts. And then, one day, Sarah closed her eyes for the last time. As she slipped away into the great unknown, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she was going to the place that she had dreamed of for so many years, the sleepy forest, where she would find rest and happiness forevermore. As Sarah's spirit floated up towards the heavens, she saw a figure waiting for her in the distance. It was the man from her dream, dressed in his flowing white robes and smiling at her with eyes like blue diamonds. "Welcome home, Sarah," he said, holding out his hand. Sarah took his hand, feeling a sense of love and belonging that she had never experienced before. She felt herself being drawn towards the sleepy forest, towards the place where her dreams had come true. And as she entered the forest once again, Sarah knew that she was finally home. The sleepy forest had given her everything she had ever wanted: peace, happiness, and a sense of belonging. And she knew that she would spend eternity in its warm embrace, surrounded by the magic and beauty that had brought her so much joy. As the years went by, Sarah's family would visit the sleepy forest, drawn by the memory of their beloved matriarch and the magical place that had brought her so much happiness. And they would walk among the trees, marveling at the beauty and enchantment that lay all around them. And they would know that Sarah was there with them, watching over them and keeping them safe. But the sleepy forest was not just a dream. It was a place of peace and beauty that existed in the hearts and minds of all who had been lucky enough to experience it. And Sarah knew that, even in death, she would always be a part of its warm embrace.